Hello. My girlfriend told me she wasn't ready and said I should marry someone else if I couldn't wait. I told her I loved her, but I wasn't going to beg or compete for commitment. I put the ring away, ended things quietly, and days later her family called, furious. So she didn't even let me finish the sentence. I was halfway down on one knee when she exhaled, slow, irritated, and said, I'm not ready. If you can't wait, marry someone else. Not crying, not shocked, just annoyed. Like I'd asked her to help me move on a Sunday. I'm Ryan, 25M. She's Ava, 24F. We've been together almost 3 years. Lived together for 1. And before anyone asks, yes, marriage was discussed. Repeatedly. Casually at first, then more seriously over the last 6 months. She knew this wasn't coming out of nowhere. We were in our apartment, the one we split rent on, the one she calls our home when it's convenient, and my place when she's mad. I didn't plan anything dramatic. No restaurant. No crowd. Just a quiet night in, takeout on the counter, her favorite show paused on the TV. She always said she hated public proposals. Said they felt performative. Apparently private ones do too. I stayed there for a second, ring box open, feeling exposed in a way I wasn't prepared for. She didn't look at the ring. She looked at me like I'd misread the room. I love you, she added quickly, like a disclaimer. But I'm not there. And I don't want to feel pressured. Pressured. 3 years. Shared bills. Shared furniture. Shared future talk. But this was pressure. I stood up slowly and closed the ring box. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I said, I love you too. But I won't beg or compete for commitment. She scoffed. Actually scoffed. Why are you being so dramatic, she said. I'm just being honest. Would you rather I lie? That was the moment something shifted. Not when she said no, but when she assumed I'd stay anyway. Like this was just a delay. Like I'd nod, put the ring away, and wait in line behind some imaginary finish line she controlled. I slid the ring into my pocket. Okay, I said. She frowned. Okay, what? Okay, I repeated. Then we're done. Her face changed. Not hurt, not sad, confused. Like this wasn't how the script was supposed to go. She thought this was a conversation. She didn't realize I had already decided. She laughed after I said it. Not a nervous laugh. Not disbelief. A short, sharp laugh like I'd just threatened to quit my job after a bad day. Ryan, stop, she said. You're being ridiculous. I didn't sit back down. I stayed standing, which seemed to irritate her more than anything I'd said so far. I'm not, I replied. You told me to marry someone else if I can't wait. I'm just taking you seriously. She rolled her eyes and grabbed her phone off the couch. You always do this. You turn everything into an ultimatum. That word again. Ultimatum. Like I'd cornered her instead of asking a question I'd earned the right to ask. I reminded her, calmly, that she'd been the one who brought up timelines first. That she'd been the one sending me engagement rings on Instagram as a joke. That she'd talked about weddings like they were abstract ideas until suddenly they weren't. She waved me off. That doesn't mean I agreed to anything. I'm only 24. I still want to live. Life. As if commitment meant death. I asked her what exactly she was waiting for. A job milestone? A certain age? A feeling? She shrugged. I'll know when I know. That answer hit harder than the rejection, because it meant there was no finish line. No shared goal. Just me standing still while she decided when, or if, I was enough. I told her I wasn't asking her to rush. I was asking her to choose. That's when her tone changed. Why do you need a ring so badly, she snapped. Is it an ego thing? Like you need to lock me down before I figure out I could do better? There it was. Casual. Cruel. Unnecessary. I felt something go quiet inside me. Not anger. Detachment. I said, I don't need to lock you down. I need to know I'm not waiting in line. She stood up then, face tight. I can't believe you're throwing everything away over this. I looked around the apartment. Our apartment. The one filled with shared stuff and half-finished plans. No, I said. I'm just not pretending anymore. She shook her head like I was embarrassing her. You'll calm down. We'll talk tomorrow. That assumption, that I'd sleep on it and come back smaller, told me everything. I grabbed my jacket. There's nothing left to talk about, I said. She didn't follow me. Didn't stop me. She thought I was bluffing. She was wrong. I didn't go far that night. Just drove around until my hands stopped shaking. I kept replaying her voice in my head. You'll calm down. We'll talk tomorrow. Like my feelings were a tantrum. Like time would shrink me back into compliance. I slept on my friend Matt's couch. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a blanket and said, You good? I said yeah, and for once it wasn't a lie. The next morning, my phone was full. Not apologies. Not questions. Instructions. We need to talk tonight. Don't be immature. You really scared me last night. That one almost made me laugh. Scared her by taking her at her word. I replied with one sentence. I meant what I said. I'm done. Her response came immediately. What do you mean done? All caps. No punctuation discipline when panic hits. I didn't answer. By noon, the tone shifted. I never said we were breaking up. You're twisting my words. Why are you doing this to us? There it was, the rewrite. The attempt to soften the rejection now that consequences existed. She showed up at the apartment while I was at work. Texted me a photo of the ring box on the coffee table. You forgot this, she wrote. I hadn't forgotten. I'd left it there on purpose. When I got home, she was sitting on the couch like she still belonged there. Shoes off. Hoodie on. Familiar posture. Territorial. So, she said, are you done proving your point? I stood by the door and said, I didn't propose to make a point. She scoffed. You proposed to pressure me. I shook my head. No, I proposed because I knew what I wanted. She crossed her arms. Well, I don't. And that shouldn't end everything. But it does, I said quietly. Because I'm not waiting indefinitely while you decide. That's when she snapped. You think you're so mature, she said. But real love waits. I looked at her and realized something painful and clarifying at the same time. She didn't want time. She wanted control over it. I picked up the ring box, slid it into my jacket, and said, I hope you find what you're ready for. Her face twisted, not sad, not angry, offended. You're making a huge mistake, she said. I nodded. I know. And I walked out again. This time for good. The next few days felt unreal, like the relationship was still happening somewhere else, and I'd just stepped out of frame. I went back to the apartment once, during the afternoon, while she was at work. I didn't take everything, just clothes, my laptop, the stuff I'd need short-term. I left the furniture, the mugs we picked together, the dumb framed quote she liked. I wasn't trying to punish her. I just didn't want reasons to come back. That night, my phone started blowing up. Not from her. From her sister first. Then her cousin. Then an unknown number I didn't answer. Finally, Ava called from her mom's phone. I answered because I knew it wouldn't stop otherwise. What did you do? She demanded. No hello. No softness. Straight to accusation. I ended the relationship, I said. You embarrassed me, she snapped. My mom is freaking out. Everyone thinks you just walked out for no reason. I told her there was a reason. That I proposed. She said no, and told me to marry someone else if I couldn't wait. She scoffed. You're so dramatic. That's not what I meant. But it's what you said, I replied. She went quiet for a second, then said, So you're really just done? Yes. You don't even want to talk this through? We did talk, I said. You were clear. That's when her voice changed, sharp, bitter. You know my parents thought you were serious. They thought you were mature. I almost laughed. Thought. I am serious, I said. That's why I'm not staying. She hung up on me. 2 hours later, her mom called. I didn't answer. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from her dad. Long angry. Talking about how I'd blindsided Ava. How commitment means patience. How real men don't walk away when things get uncomfortable. I sat on the edge of the bed listening, feeling strangely calm. They were furious because they thought I'd break. Because everyone expected me to wait quietly while their daughter decided if I was worth choosing. I deleted the voicemail. For the first time, the noise outside didn't matter. I wasn't arguing anymore. I was already gone. I thought blocking her number would buy me some peace. Instead, it rerouted the chaos. Her mom stopped calling after a day. Her dad after 2. But Ava didn't give up. She just changed tactics. Mutual friends started texting me things like, she's really hurting, and she didn't mean it like that, and my personal favorite, you know how she is. Yeah, I did. That was the problem. One friend told me Ava had been telling people I ambushed her with the proposal, that she'd felt cornered, that she'd been honest, and I'd punished her for it by leaving. Punished. Like I owed her continued access to me no matter what she chose. 3 days after I moved out, she finally sent a message that got through, email this time. Long, emotional, carefully worded. She said she was shocked I'd thrown everything away so fast. Said she thought I loved her enough to wait. Said she didn't understand why marriage had to be now and why I couldn't just trust her timeline. What she never said was I'm sorry. Not once. She framed it like a misunderstanding we were both equally responsible for. Like my response had been disproportionate. Like the problem wasn't the rejection, but my refusal to linger afterward. I typed out a response. Deleted it. Typed another. Deleted that too. Eventually, I sent one sentence. I didn't leave because you said no. I left because you told me to marry someone else. She replied 5 minutes later. That was a joke. A joke. I stared at the screen, realizing how differently we experienced reality. How something that cut me cleanly in half could be dismissed as careless wording once it stopped working in her favor. I didn't reply. Later that night, Matt asked me if I was okay. I told him the truth. I was sad, sure, but I wasn't confused anymore. And that mattered, because clarity hurts less than hope that keeps getting postponed. And I finally understood something I should have seen sooner. She didn't reject marriage. She rejected choosing me, while still wanting me to stay. And I wasn't built for that kind of limbo. The quiet didn't last. By the end of the week, Ava showed up at my work. Not inside, thankfully, but waiting across the street when I walked out. Arms crossed, sunglasses on, like she'd rehearsed the scene. Can we talk? She asked, already annoyed that I hadn't smiled. I almost said no. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. We sat on a bench. Public. Neutral. She started immediately. I don't get why you're acting like this was some huge betrayal. I told her I wasn't acting. I was responding. She scoffed. You're 25, Ryan. People wait. You don't just blow up a relationship because someone isn't ready on your schedule. I asked her if there was ever a schedule. An age. A year. Anything concrete. She hesitated, then snapped. Why do you need guarantees? That's so unattractive. That word, unattractive, did something to me. Like she was grading my worth based on how little I asked for. I said, I don't need guarantees. I need intention. She rolled her eyes. You sound like a podcast. Then she leaned in and said the line that ended the conversation for good. You know my parents loved you. You really want to be the guy who walked away because he couldn't wait? I stood up. No, I said. I'm the guy who walked away because he wasn't chosen. She stood too, flustered now. You're twisting everything. No, I said calmly. I'm finally seeing it clearly. She laughed, bitter this time. You're going to regret this. I shrugged. Maybe, but I won't regret respecting myself. Her face hardened. Don't expect me to explain this to people for you. I smiled slightly. I don't. And I walked away while she was still standing there, realizing, too late, that I wasn't coming back. She thought distance would scare me. It didn't. It freed me. I thought that would finally be it. I was wrong. 2 days after she cornered me outside work, my phone started buzzing nonstop from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored the first few. Then one voicemail slipped through. It was her mom. Angry. Loud. Not even pretending to be calm. She accused me of humiliating Ava, of stringing her along, of proposing when I clearly knew she wasn't ready, which was news to me considering Ava had spent the last year talking about weddings like a hypothetical she fully expected to step into eventually. An hour later, her dad called. Same tone, different angle. He said I disrespected their family, that I created drama by walking away instead of being patient like an adult. He said real commitment means waiting without pressure. What none of them mentioned was Ava telling me to marry someone else. Not once. By that evening, extended family had opinions too. A cousin I'd met twice messaged me on Instagram saying Ava was devastated and I'd broken her trust. Someone else asked why I'd propose if I was just going to leave. That one almost got me, because it made me realize how the story was being told. In their version, Ava was a confused 24-year-old who needed time. I was the guy who couldn't handle hearing no. There was no room in that story for her tone, or the eye roll, or the assumption I'd stay anyway. I didn't correct anyone, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. Late that night, Ava texted me from a new number. You didn't have to let this get so ugly. I stared at the screen, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I replied with one line. I didn't make it ugly. I just didn't stay quiet. She didn't respond. But I knew then, this wasn't about love anymore. It was about reputation. And the fact that her family was furious told me everything I needed to know. They weren't upset she wasn't ready. They were upset I didn't wait around anyway. The funny thing is, once her family got involved, Ava suddenly went quiet. No more angry texts. No more surprise appearances. Just radio silence for a few days, like she was regrouping, or letting everyone else do the fighting for her. Then she reached out again. An email this time. Subject line, can we talk like adults? That alone irritated me. She wrote that things had gotten out of hand, that her parents were upset, and it was causing unnecessary tension. She said she never wanted it to escalate, and that she felt caught in the middle. Not once did she mention how I felt, or what that moment on one knee had been like for me. She said she still loved me, that she just needed more time to feel secure, that maybe we rushed into living together that maybe expectations got misaligned. A lot of passive language. A lot of things happened, like neither of us had agency. Then came the line that told me nothing had actually changed. I just wish you hadn't reacted so extremely. Reacted. Like leaving after being told to marry someone else was an overreaction. I didn't respond right away. I let the email sit while I thought about the last 3 years. About how often she'd shut things down with "you're overthinking." How often she'd decided the pace and expected me to match it quietly. How "not ready" had always meant not ready to choose you, but still ready to keep you. I replied the next morning. I didn't react. I decided. There's a difference. She responded an hour later. So that's it. You're really not willing to wait at all. I read that sentence 3 times before it fully clicked. Even now, after everything, she still saw this as me refusing to wait, not her refusing to choose. I typed one last message. I waited 3 years. I just won't wait without direction. She never replied after that. But I found out later she told people I gave up on love. The truth was simpler. I gave up on hoping someone would eventually want what I already knew I did. I thought the story would fade after that. That time and silence would do their job. Instead, it escalated. A mutual friend warned me first. Hey, Ava's parents are really mad. Like mad. Apparently, they'd been telling anyone who would listen that I'd led her on. That I'd proposed knowing she wasn't ready just to force her hand. That I'd humiliated her by leaving instead of being patient. What surprised me wasn't that they were angry. It was how personal they took it. 2 days later, Ava's aunt, someone I'd spoken to maybe 3 times in my life, left me a voicemail. She said I'd broken Ava's heart. That young men like me run the second things get serious. That I needed to grow up. I sat there listening, phone in my hand, feeling oddly detached. Because here's the thing no one wanted to address. If Ava truly believed we weren't ready for marriage, then me leaving should have made sense. Painful, sure, but logical. The fury only made sense if they assumed I was supposed to stay anyway. That night, Ava texted me again. I never wanted my family dragged into this, she wrote. You could have just waited. There it was. The core belief laid bare. I replied once. Calm. Final. I didn't drag anyone in. And waiting only works when there's something you're waiting toward. She responded with the last attempt at guilt. So 3 years meant nothing to you. I stared at that question longer than any other. Then I typed the truth. It meant enough for me to ask, and enough to walk away when the answer was clear. She didn't reply, but the call stopped after that. The messages slowed. The anger burned itself out once everyone realized I wasn't coming back to negotiate. I didn't win anything. I didn't prove a point. I just refused to stay in a relationship where commitment was always later and my role was always wait. And somehow, that made people angrier than if I'd cheated or lied. Because walking away quietly gave them nothing to fix. It's been a few weeks now. Long enough that the calls stopped. Long enough that the anger burned itself out. Long enough that people stopped asking if I was okay and started accepting that this wasn't some phase I was going to snap out of. I moved into a smaller place closer to work. It's quiet. Bare walls. No shared furniture. No reminders. I like it more than I expected. Here's the part that keeps replaying in my head, though. Ava genuinely believed I'd stay. Every step of the way, she assumed the proposal was just a milestone I'd eventually circle back to. That I'd put the ring away, nod along, and keep building a life with her while she figured out if I was worth committing to. She thought not ready meant not now, not choosing you. The moment she said, marry someone else if you can't wait, something inside me shut off. Quietly. Permanently. That was the breaking point she never noticed. By the time her family started calling, by the time she tried to soften it, by the time she reframed it as me being impatient, I was already gone. I didn't end things loudly. I didn't insult her. I didn't drag her online or argue with her parents. I slid the ring away. I told the truth once. And I left. Some people think relationships end with explosions. With cheating. With screaming matches and block numbers. Ours ended because I refused to audition for commitment. I loved her. I still probably do, in some quiet corner of my brain. But love isn't enough when you're the only one willing to choose a direction. She wanted time. I wanted intention. And when I realized I couldn't have both, I chose myself and walked away without begging. That decision still feels right. Even now. Bye-bye.